Here we are with part 2 in our series entitled Crushed. What do we do in the moments that life isn't working out the way we thought it would work out? What happens when we have all these plans and they somehow aren't happening the way we want them to happen? You know, we use this term all the time, living the dream. Hey, how you doing? Living the dream. And unfortunately, most of the time, that statement is very sarcastic. What that really means is life isn't working out real well. I'm just in a rut or a routine. I'm just maintaining. I'm just holding on. When really the term living the dream really is about I have no regrets. I'm living life to the fullest and I'm enjoying life. So when we have a dream, what happens when we have a detour? So that is the big idea. What do you do when your dreams get detoured? Now notice I used the word detoured, not totally interrupted. Listen, I'm not going to say what happens when your dream turns into a nightmare. That's not the point here. It's what happens when there's a detour. Yeah, you see, everybody starts off, whether it's junior high school, college, a new job, a new house, marriage, you open up a bank account, no matter what you do, we open that, we start this new chapter in this new season with a mindset of what could happen. We have a dream, we have an expectation, we have a something that we're looking forward to happening here. Yeah, but in the midst of all these things, yeah, stuff happens. Yeah, in the midst of marriage, stuff happens. Yeah, we get married and we know we're going to have a great life together, but then there's financial problems, cars need brakes, sometimes they need transmissions, there's bills to pay, there's kids' activities, there's things to maintain and manage, so on and so forth. But in the midst of the adventure, there's stuff here. But we have a dream. So I want to launch today just where we did last week. And that is in 2 Corinthians chapter 4. The Apostle Paul writing, we now have this light shining in our hearts, but we ourselves are like fragile clay jars containing this great treasure. This makes it clear that our power is from God and not from ourselves. Yes, we're fragile. We have these earth suits we're wearing, but we contain something so powerful. Yeah. And so verse 8, but we are pressed on every side by troubles. We are not crushed. And then here it is. We are perplexed, but not driven to despair. I'm going to pull up right there because this is what we're going to focus on today. The Apostle Paul, going through his life, he said that I'm perplexed. I'm at a loss. Actually, the usage of this is I'm in doubt. I'm not sure what to do. And that's what he was facing here. And there's times in life that, yes, we are perplexed. What's going on here? But he says, I'm not in despair. And despair is differently. That's like life without an exit. That's like you're captured here. It's leaving a person totally at a loss. Okay, that means everything, like it's totally messed up here. There's no exit strategy here. There's no way out. You see, and sometimes life, because of what happens to us in moments, in those moments, stuff happens and we feel like we can't get out. There's no way out. And the Apostle Paul was saying here that, yeah, I sometimes doubt, I'm perplexed, maybe a little confused here. It seems like things aren't working. I'm at a loss. But things aren't a total loss. This is it. So we're going to take a look at a story today, and we're going to unwind it because in the Old Testament about Joseph, the Joseph in the Old Testament, not the Mary, the mother of Jesus, Joseph. Now we can only mention him in December. He gets an honorable mention every December, and that's it. But today we're going to go to Genesis here, and we're going to look at this Joseph here, and we're going to see the same thing about Joseph that the Apostle Paul said. Apostle Paul says, I am pressed, perplexed, persecuted, and struck down, but I am not crushed. I am not in despair. I am not forsaken, and I'm not destroyed. Yes. See, remember, life does not go in a straight line. Life has a lot of curves, a lot of hills, and a lot of valleys. Now, we know that here in Western Pennsylvania. We should know that more than anybody here. Yeah, and it has all these things going at it. You see, I remember in my life, like Listen, and I'm just going to speak about my own marriage. Why does Natalie and I have such a fondness and a heart towards marriage? It's because we know the strain and stress of marriage. Yes, it's an adventure. Yes, it's fun and joyful, but we've had some rough times. Yeah, we have. Yeah, I remember when Natalie said it was over and she wanted out. And we had to fight for what really mattered to us. That doesn't define my life. That's a moment in my life. You see, sometimes we confuse our life with moments and things that happen to us in life. And really, they're just detours. So we have a dream. We know what we want, to live with no regrets and life to the fullest. But we have detours. And I am not going to try to give you in this moment 3 easy steps to get your dream to become a reality. Because it's a journey that we're on, not just a simple destination here. That's the struggle, and that's what we're looking at here. I mean, just this past week, talking about detours. I don't know about you, but I hate detours. I hate changes. I mean, it was just this past week, I found out I was supposed to fly somewhere, and the flight got canceled, and there was no possible way to get to where I was going via a flight. And I'm going to tell you, it affected me. I'm like, are you serious? Why is this happening to me? I'm going to speak at a men's conference. I'm going to go do that, and I'm going to do all these things, God. Don't you realize? I mean, you'd have thought I had a horrible diagnosis. You'd have thought something serious happened. When really the inconvenience is I have to get in a car for 8 hours and drive there now. You see, it was only a detour. It wasn't defining my life, but we get focused on the detour. I don't know about you. I hate those orange signs, detour this way, because it means it might take a little bit longer, but we're still going. What that simply means is we have an exit strategy. We have a way to get there. And we're not totally confined. It doesn't say road closed, it ends, no way to get there. No, we can get there. That's what this is about. So here's a thought for you, just a thought. Amazing things will happen in the lifetime of obedience. That's right. Amazing things will happen in the lifetime of obedience. Not a one-time shot, not even a two-time shot, but a lifetime that just simply follows God and follows the next road sign with the detour. Especially if you don't know where you are, you're following the detour, you got to look to the next sign, look to the next arrow. And all of those are obedience. Am I going to go the way that I'm supposed to go, or try to find my own way? Yeah, that's it here. Yeah, so here it is, Joseph's story. Joseph is this story, chapters and chapters in the book of Genesis, the very first book in the Bible, Genesis. More chapters are attributed to Joseph's life than any other person in Genesis here. Yeah, Abraham, the man of faith, the man of promise, the father of many, had Isaac. He was a son of promise. Yeah, who had Jacob, and then Jacob's son, Joseph here. Yeah. Now, I want to point something out about Joseph, because I want this to be your prayer and my prayer here. There isn't a single reproof of Joseph, only highlights of his character and integrity, walking with and in obedience to God. Wow, would that be said of you? Would that be said of me? Yeah, life has detours, but there's nothing written of reproofs about our character and integrity, nothing about our walk of obedience and living with God. That is my prayer, that I'm going to be that kind of man with courage here. So we're gonna look at this here and see that there were many crushing moments in Joseph's life, but that doesn't mean his life was a disaster. He had moments where things weren't working out, but he responded by looking at the next road sign and just following God in his character and integrity. Genesis chapter 37, verse 3, Jacob, his dad, loved Joseph more than any of his other children. Now I know many of you parents out there probably say that, I don't have a favorite child. Yes, you do. Yeah, this is how I know if you do or not. If you were to get $1 million, I said, here's $1 million today. Which child do you call first? That's your favorite. That's right. That's your favorite. Come on. So we do. So Jacob had Joseph here, and he favored him. And because Joseph had been born to him in old age, he was the youngest there. And so one day Jacob had a special gift made for Joseph, a beautiful robe. We know this is the robe of many colors, the cloak of many colors, many people call it. But his brothers hated Joseph because their father loved him more than the rest of them. That means they knew that he was loved more, and they couldn't say a kind word to him. And so they were jealous. See, at 17 years old, this wasn't just a robe. This was a robe that he esteemed him with. He blessed him with, because what he was communicating, Jacob was communicating, this is the heir. He's going to be the leader of the tribe. Not the oldest, but now the youngest is now going to be the leader here. And they were jealous. They were angry about this. Why does he get this? What I'm trying to say to you is, even when we follow God, people that aren't experiencing the favor of God are going to be jealous, and they're going to talk, and they can't say a kind word about them here. So there it is. So that robe was very, very significant here. But Joseph sought the approval of his father. That's right here. And so the story goes on, and Joseph had a dream. Yeah, he had a dream. And when he told his brothers about it, they hated him more than ever. Oh my goodness. Listen to this dream. We're in a field tying up bundles of grain, and suddenly my bundle stood up and your bundles all gathered around and bowed down to mine. Oh my goodness. It's like, Joseph, stop telling your brothers. They already don't like you. Stop telling them this. And his brothers responded, so you think you'll be our king? Do you? Do you actually think you will reign over us? And they hated him all the more because of his dreams and the way he talked about them. And then soon Joseph had another dream here. And he told him again, he said, I had another dream. The sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed down before me. And this time he told the dream to his father as well as his brothers. But his father scolded him. What kind of dream is that? He asked. Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you? And then they were jealous, and they were wondering what this was really about. But I just want to pause here for a moment and look at this word, dream. Had a dream means to bind firmly. That means to be bound firmly. You see, when I talk about a dream here, I'm not just talking about like, oh, you go to sleep, you wake up, wow, I had a thought. But this is something prophetic, something God gives us, and we are bound to that. It's a call of God. That's it. So when it says that Joseph had a dream, it's more like the dream had Joseph. You see, I don't do ministry. The ministry has me. I don't just serve God. God has me. I am not just, I have a marriage. Marriage has a hold of me. You're constrained by it. It's a part of your life here. And when God gives us a promise, when He gives us a dream to live for Him, we are bound to that thing. Yes, there it is. Come on. God's dreams sustain us. God's words sustain us in the midst of detours here. Yeah. You see, sometimes we get these things way up high in the mountaintop and sometimes in the valley, but we need to cling to what God is doing here. And in Genesis 37:19, the brothers, here comes the dreamer. You see, when you're bound to God and you're doing things His way, people don't like it. People will respond in negative ways. There's the dreamer. There's the one bound to God. They'll make excuses why they don't have to. They'll look for every clause to get out of what they don't need to do here. Listen, Crushing can shrink your dream, but that's why we need to hold on to it. What's God saying? And I want to speak to you in the midst of your detour, or there may be a detour ahead, to not give up the dream that God has for your life, to give Him glory and honor in every part of your life, physically, spiritually, emotionally, to your friends, to your family, to the people around you. Listen, we can live the dream, but it's not my dream. It's God's dream. See, I always ask people, they say, how you doing? Living the dream. Is it your dream or God's dream? Whose dream? Do you have one, or does the dream from God have you? Being a godly man, a godly woman, a person of faith here. So this is what happens here. In Genesis 37, Joseph got thrown into a pit. That's right, the brothers wanted to kill him, actually. And they made up a story, actually, to his dad about how he died. Okay? But they threw him into a pit. And then after they threw him into a pit, they actually, what they did is they sold him into slavery to people from Egypt. Okay, there's Israel and Egypt here. And they sold him into slavery for 20 pieces of silver, which signifies that was the price of a male slave. So he went from being esteemed, a child of God, part of the, I'm going to use the word Israelites here, Jacob and Abraham, Father Abraham here. All that. He's now in slavery. Listen, he had a dream. He had a purpose. And now he's in a pit. And so what's he going to do? He gets sold. And here in Genesis 39, and the story goes on, Joseph ends up serving in the home of Potiphar, the captain of the guard of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. But look what happens in chapter 39. Verse 2, the Lord was with Joseph, and he succeeded in everything he did. Yeah, verse 3. Potiphar noticed this and realized that the Lord was with Joseph. Even though he's in a foreign land, as a slave, he gets put into a place, but it was the appearance God was with him. So he went from having this great dream, giving God glory, and what's going to happen? He ends up in a pit. Then he ends up in Potiphar's house. Yeah, but he was succeeding in everything he does here. Yeah, Joseph prospers in a place of perplexity. Just because we're in doubt, just because we're confused, it doesn't mean we can't prosper. Joseph prospered, and I want to speak to you today. You may feel like you're in a closed place. Life is a total loss, and you may feel like you're on this detour, not knowing where you're going here. But God has you. He's directing you, and you can be prosperous. You can be fruitful, even in the midst of being in a foreign place. People always say, well, I wish I could be involved in the ministry. No, God has you as a missionary in your apartment complex, or in your neighborhood, or the place you work, or the place you go to school. That's your mission field. Yeah. See, we feel like the pit and then Potiphar's house. It's like, okay, what's going on here now? But in Genesis 39:19, then what happens is Potiphar's wife falsely accuses Joseph. That's right, falsely accuses. He's a man of integrity. He has character on the inside, integrity on the outside here, and he knows who he is. But she makes up a story that he was making advances to her, which was not true. So here he goes from the pit to Potiphar's house, succeeding, and now he gets unjustly accused, and he ends up in prison. Thanks, God. Thanks for this great dream you gave me that took me on this huge detour. That's what it was here. Yeah. See, your circumstances and doubt and perplexity. Well, listen, if Joseph was a real man like me, I could just see him sitting in prison. I know what I would be like. Yeah, God, hey, thanks a lot. How come it works for everybody else, but it doesn't work for me? How come everybody else gets exactly what they want and I don't? Filled with hopelessness, filled with pain, all of these things here. But success has nothing to do with where you're at right now. It has everything to do with how we respond here. Yeah. And so God begins to redeem this situation here. In Genesis chapter 40, Joseph has the opportunity to interpret dreams for the cupbearer and the baker here. And so he says in verse 14, hey, please remember me when you get out, because he interpreted some dreams here. But what happened was they forgot all about Joseph. Yeah, Joseph does him a solid. He does something really great. Yeah. But what happens is he says, okay, remember me, and they forget all about him. There's people in your life that you have done something good for, and they forgot about you. They've shifted you off to the side. You're just like Joseph. It will not determine your whole life. It's just a little detour. That's all it is. You may have friends and family, maybe family that has hurt you, that has given you pain. God can even use you in the midst of a prison. He can still do this here. He's sold into slavery, ends up here. Come on. Now, let me just throw this out here. Is that if Joseph knew everything in advance to what was going to happen, if he was like me, he would have not have done it. If I would have known everything that would happen to me in ministry over the years, I would not have done it. No, I wouldn't have. I would have just chucked it all and said, forget about it. Forget about it. No way. Yeah, but he didn't. See, Joseph was crushed and crushed and crushed again. But he wasn't in despair. He had to be in perplexity. Even though the Bible doesn't communicate that, that's just me. That's what Pastor Rick's saying right here. Yeah, where's God? Where's he at? After all I've done here. Yeah, come on. But he held on to the dream. He held on to the vision. Joseph was restrained from sin, redeemed from sorrow, and restored to honor by being held by God's dream for his life. Man, take a picture of that. Write that down here. Yeah, he was restrained from sin, never sinning. He was redeemed from sorrow. He was restored in honor every time. Why? Because he stood in his integrity. That's my prayer, and that's what I can say over all the years. Listen, I haven't made perfect decisions all the time, but I have my character and my integrity intact. And then serve with humility. No matter where he was, he served with humility. And then he kept trying to see things from God's perspective, not a formula. See, I'm not trying to give you a formula. I'm trying to give you principles so that you can live the dream God has for you. So here it is, Joseph following along. You don't have to know completely to obey immediately. We don't have to know completely to obey immediately. Trust God's road signs. Yeah, trust him. Look to him, even in moments and places where you're not sure, in perplexity. I'm not in despair. I still have a place to go here. So here it is in Genesis 41. Joseph has an opportunity to interpret Pharaoh's dreams here. Yeah. And so because he interpreted Pharaoh, the one in charge of dreams, he gets out of prison. Yeah, 13 years. 13 years he was in prison. And I want to tell you that there's a lot of wait for it's in the Bible. There's a lot of wait for it moments in the Bible. There's the Apostle Paul waiting for the promises of God. David, you're going to be king. 13, 14 years later, it's going to happen. Solomon, build the temple. 13 years to build the temple. Moses, 40 years in the desert. Jesus comes to earth, 30 years as a faithful carpenter. See, what I'm trying to tell you is there's a lot of people in the Bible. It doesn't just happen like that. We're looking for the magic pill. We're looking for the magic potion. I don't have one for you. I have the process of God. Continue to wait on him. Continue to expect. Continue to anticipate. Continue to look to him in this process here. So Joseph gets promoted to being second in command now. So he goes from having a dream, the pit, to Potiphar's house, to prison, to a promotion, to second in command. And he comes up with this great plan. And because of a dream that he interprets, he says, okay, there's going to be 7 years of prosperity and there's going to be 7 years of famine. So we're going to get ready for it. See, God speaks to him in the midst of the detours and prepares him for such a moment as this here. So Joseph's dream took him on a journey. This is the journey from the pit to Potiphar's house, to prison, to promotion, to prosperity, to he was able to protect and provide for his family. And why do I say that he provided for his family? Because they were in need, and Jacob, his dad, sends his brothers to him in the end of this whole story. And yes, they bowed down before him and they asked for help. Yeah, it took about 22 years. That's the approximate time. Don't know the exact many, but it's right in that 22 years. From 17 years old to 39. That's what God used to prepare him for that moment. You see, you may be in a moment and you're wondering, where is God? You may be in a moment where, man, it's been years. Why am I still alone and not married? Why didn't this happen? Why didn't we have children? Why do we have the children we do have? Why don't we get a nicer house? Why don't I get promoted at work? Listen, what I'm here to tell you is nothing can deter you from God's plan, because in the end, God was setting him up to be in a place to provide for his family and not hold grudges against them, not hold things against them. Why do I say that? Because in this moment in Genesis chapter 41, Joseph has 2 sons. He has his first son called Manasseh. Yeah, for he said, God has made me forget all the troubles and everyone in my father's family. See, Joseph, he could have became bitter. He could have blamed. He could have got mad. He could have messed up God's plan. But the detours didn't stop him from the dream becoming a reality here. So he names his son, God has caused me to forget everything, all the bad stuff. Then he has a second son, Ephraim here. Yeah, and in verse 52, his second son, God has made me fruitful in the land of my grief. You may be in a land of grief. Maybe you're in mourning. Maybe you've lost a loved one. Maybe you're in a down time here. But God can still prosper you and give you success even in the midst of your grief. I'm here to tell you that. See, just because we live in a moment of being crushed, it will not define our lives. God is setting me up. Why? Because Joseph said, you intended to harm me, but God intended it all for good. He brought me to this position so I could save the lives of many people. You know, earlier when I mentioned that Natalie and I went through a lot of struggles in our marriage, and we learned how to relate. And now I see that what God is doing in us, and God's using our lives to help other marriages right now. You see, when you're in your lowest in your grief, God wants to redeem it in His timing, not necessarily give us everything we want, how we want it, but He redeems it in such a way that it can be used for others. You see, every time when I'm at my lowest, lowest point, God redeems me and He heals me and then gives me strength to walk forward here. Yes. How did I make it? I get this question. How did I make it all the years in ministry? How did I do it? Well, I'm going to tell you, because God has a hold of me. And there's been detours as a father. There's been detours financially. But I am staying the course. I'm going to stay obedient to what God has given me with great joy, embracing the adventure here through the roughest times, because life is not a straight line. It's full of curves. It's like a roller coaster, up and down here. But you have no idea what God can do in one moment of obedience. In one moment of obedience, God can turn so many things around. So what am I asking you to do? Again, not a formula, but principally stand in your character and integrity. Be faithful there. Yes, continue to serve with humility wherever you are, a humble heart, and then see with God's perspective. Those are just some principles to help you through the detour, to help you find what God is doing in the midst of this. So I want to help you, embrace you. You may feel like God has forgotten you. You may feel like you're worthless, or that you're in disappointment or rejected, or life is just not going right, or that all this adversity must mean there's something wrong with me. I want to turn all that around and cause you to run with the dream God has for you to God, not away from Him. Run with Him to a place of safety and protection, because God wants to redeem where you are with who He is. That's the story of Joseph. Now, if you're wondering where to begin, it all begins with a relationship with God the Father through Jesus Christ. And if you don't have a day, a moment, or time where you became a follower of Jesus, here's your time. Here's your one moment of obedience that can change the trajectory of your entire life. It starts by saying, God, I'm a sinner and I need you. God, would you redeem my situation by what Jesus Christ has done on the cross? And Jesus, I want you to lead me through the detours of life so that I really could live the dream and live life to the fullest and live with no regrets. In the name of Jesus, just pray that prayer. And then let's begin and let's continue to follow. Hey, I hope and pray that you've enjoyed this message on Joseph. Next week, we're going to have another part 3 of this crushed series. And I want you to tell all your friends about it, because it's not only going to help you, it's going to help them as well. See you next week.